this roller coaster has lasted 62 years. That's what I was then, almost 63, with no actual end in sight as yet. I feel ill, plain and simple, headachy, nauseous, out of sorts. Sugar has become a panacea for all things remotely stressful, even when I'm not really aware that I actually am stressed. It's a silent hoodlum, knocking my immune system down like a sledgehammer. Nothing good can come of it. It is purely and simple bad for me. And I fear the future as it stands.
Pam, how did you find carnivore?
Well, first of all, hi, Dave. I really feel privileged to be on your channel. Thank you for having me. Well, it really started, my interest in food and nutrition really began back in the 80s. So some time ago now, when two of my three children decided they wanted to go vegetarian. And I thought, well, how am I going to do this? They didn't have it. It wasn't for any particular reason other than they didn't like meat, which is fair enough. So I said, well, all right, then I'll go vegetarian with you. And so, of course, I went and bought a book on nutrition because I thought I can't just give them cheese. You know, there was nothing in those days. There was nothing, just soy lumps in a box. It was just awful. So I bought a book on whole foods and boned up on major and minor proteins, you know, all of that to make sure they were getting what I thought was everything they needed. So that was in the early 80s, and my youngest son didn't want to go vegetarian, and that was fine. And my then husband didn't go vegetarian. So it worked quite well. I was just doing two different meals all the time. Anyway, then we went to live in the Gambia for a year because my ex-husband's an architect, and we thought he'd do a 2-year stint. I only stayed a year. But while we were there, of course, it was very limited what you could get. It wasn't a tourist place in those days. It was, you know, very, very basic. And so we lived on fish and fresh fish and just fruits and vegetables, really. So that was quite a restricted diet in itself. And of course, you know, they seemed to thrive on that. But when they grew up, when we came back and they grew up, they then adjusted their diet as they wished. I can remember Adam ringing me from college I don't think it was college or uni, and saying, Mum, I've just had a steak and I love it. And I said, well, good for you. That's fantastic. You know, just eat whatever you want to eat. But I was still on this vegetarian diet. But I did find that I was becoming anemic quite often. I could not get enough iron into my diet, no matter what I did. I was always kind of struggling with weight anyway. I always have done. So I was exercising, I was going to the gym, I was running, doing all these things. But then I had to have an operation. And just before I had that, they did a bone density test. And they said I was borderline osteoporotic, which I couldn't understand because I was bashing bones, as they call it. You know, I was doing everything that they'd said to do. So I didn't understand that. And of course, it didn't strike me even then. It could be what I'm eating or not eating, as it turned out. So then I got into sort of the menopause, and I suddenly had a desperate need for meat. I was just desperate. So I went back to eating a little bit of meat, always thinking all the time it's bad for me because, you know, I'd grown up in this sort of low fat era. Everything fat was bad. You know, I used to give the kids replacement butter. I used to eat lots of sunflower oil because that was good, you know, which of course it wasn't. And, but always with the best of intentions, as you do when you got kids. And that's what's so terrible. Anyway, so I started to eat meat just a little bit back and forth. So then I got divorced. And then my new husband and I, Paul, we moved to France and we started a very successful photography business, which we're still doing now. So that was in 2012. And not long after we moved here, my daughter said to me, Mum, she said, there's this great book and it's called what's it called? That Sugar book. I don't know if you know it. Damon Gamu, is it? Australian anyway. And I read it from cover to cover, and it made absolute sense. Here was my problem writ large. It was the sugar thing. That's what it was. So a light went on in my brain, you know. So while I was starting to read up on all of that sort of thing, Robert Lustig's book and Toxic, White and Deadly, is it? The various books I read. Yeah, suddenly I started to realize, you know, like when my whole life has been governed by sugar addiction. You know, you never talked about addiction to something, oh, we all love sugar, but it never ever was real, you know, until I started to analyze my childhood. Everything that happened to me as a child, you know, whether it was a bad thing or a good thing, was always rewarded or commiserated with by sweet things, cake, you know. I was always a normal child as far as size goes. I never had a weight issue as a child. But when I started at senior school, everybody was dieting. That was the thing. You had to be skinny. And I remember saying to one of my friends once, how much do you weigh then? And she said, oh, she was the same height as me, 5'6". I was 9 stone, which is absolutely fine for 5'6". And she said, you're 9 stone. I'd hate to be that heavy. I want to be 7 stone. Now, she was the same height as me, and she ironically went on to be very ill, and she got something called hirsutism, which is, you know, excessive hair growth now, because her hormones were completely shot by this, whatever she was not eating. She was just starving herself, really. But the seed was planted then that I'm fat. So even though I wasn't, and I kind of made it happen. And so anything that happened in my life from then on, I left school always feeling fat, feeling like I was never as skinny as the other girls that I wanted, because, you know, it was a Twiggy era. Everybody wanted to look like her. But the dominance of trying to make myself feel better, I would resort to buying chocolate and sweets whenever things went wrong in my life to make myself get that sugar rush. And then, you know, it's like, oh, I feel better now. It's just like having a shot of heroin, I would imagine. I don't know. But it's the same effect on me. And that carried on, really, a lifetime of dieting from then on. And so all my life I was trying to keep slim. So starving myself, really. Doing tons of exercise. That was the way to do it, you know. Always been hungry. And I'd do it for a while, and then I'd be desperate for carbs, even down to sort of going in the kitchen and getting a big bowl of cereal and eating that, because you'd still get the hit. And you know, I still didn't see it as an addiction, but of course it was very much so, and it dominated really my married life. My kids say to me, you know, you were so hyper and over emotional. You know, I'd click into crying and screeching at my ex-husband if he annoyed me in any way, which he did. But then, of course, that's why we got divorced. But he had many faults, let me put it that way. But yeah, I wouldn't respond in the way that was sensible. You know, I would go way over the top, because the kids used to listen to that and they'd hear it, and it must have been awful for them. And I mean, it is what it is. I can't change what happened, but that's how they remember me as when they were little, was mummy getting very, very over emotional and angry, way too much. You know, I couldn't react to things in a normal way. That's how it was. I think other people different. So going back to that sugar book, so having then realised that it is sugar, and I have got, you know, to really cut it out. We were doing our photography business, and one of our guests, Daphne, she had cured herself of diabetes or pre-diabetes and a brush with cancer. by going keto. Now, I'd not heard of keto. This is going back some years. And so she was an absolute inspiration. I thought, first of all, I thought, my God, how she cope with, all not having this and not having that. But she seemed to be thriving. And I thought, no, I could do that. Restriction. I'm good at restriction. Years of practice. So I started cutting out the potatoes and the bread, and I actually felt quite ill for the first couple of days. They talk about keto flu. I'm not sure if it was the bread, because that's quite heavily chemicalized. I didn't realize just how much. That all kind of gradually subsided. And I was getting on really well. And I thought, this is good. The weight was coming off, staying off. And I thought, I've found what I can do. This is great. And then I started then watching YouTube influencers, keto. Hey, you can still have cake. You can still have biscuits. Just make them with almond flour instead. And all of this, I got totally sucked into that. And of course, you're using artificial sweeteners, aren't you? So I'm getting brilliant. I mean, I love cooking. I do all the catering for our business. So, naturally I have to I'm always baking and whatever. And I thought, well, this is great. I can still have what they're having, but no sugar. Not realizing, of course, that even though, all those artificial sweeteners are still raising your blood sugars. I didn't really know that then, because this is all, it's a gradual process, isn't it? So I was still making things and that for me, but I still lost the weight, but not the craving, not the trigger. And it's that trigger that I've been sort of trying to suppress all my life, I think. Then, of course, we had COVID, didn't we? We didn't have COVID. I've never had it. I don't know what that's like, but it came about, and then we were literally stuck in the house. And I started going down rabbit holes of eating and nutrition, because I'm always fascinated by it. And then I discovered veganism. So completely got rid of all the keto things, vegan. That's the way to go. I thought, that's it. It's cruel. It's bad for the planet. I sucked it all up, as you do, especially when you're you're focused so much and not going out. It was quite a dangerous period, I think, for a lot of people. So I then tried going vegan for some reason. And France just isn't compatible with veganism. They don't get it. They don't really get vegetarianism, but veganism, no, completely off the scale. They had no idea. So I basically starved for a long, long time, but feeling virtuous, because you do. It's all about, hey, I feel really good because I'm doing all this good stuff for the planet and for myself. But of course, as I say, I was hungry all the time. So that only lasted about 9 months, something like that. Then a pivotal moment happened where I was walking my dog, and I fell very badly, and I broke my shoulder and my arm, the top of the arm, and had to have a metal pin put in, which of course affected our business terribly. So I'm like this, I couldn't do anything. It was a nightmare. Thank goodness for good friends around who helped me do various things like changing the bed linen and all, everything was just difficult. Even chopping an onion, I couldn't do anything like that. So it was a massive, massive problem. But I got over it. And but during that time, of course, I gained weight, didn't I? Because I was just emotional eating hit big time. And I just felt better just having cake all the time, biscuits, crisps, you name it. I thought, well, I don't care anymore. That's it. So I gained 35 pounds, can you believe? Just like that. It was so overnight, it felt. And one morning I looked at myself in the full length mirror with this withered arm, standing full view. And I burst into tears, and I said to my husband, I can't do this anymore. I'm I was completely gone crazy. Everything. I've got to start again. So I did. And I started reading Gary Taub's, Case for Keto, Case Against Sugar. It re-triggered everything. I mean, this is how long the process has been, but it literally re-triggered everything. And I got seriously into it then. And Ben Bickman, why we get sick, grain brain. It was really just validation of what I'd thought and kind of gleaned over the years. But there it was by eminent people who knew what they were talking about. So that was when I started doing keto, then ketovore. And then, of course, whilst on ketovore, I then read what's her name? Sally Norton's book, Toxic Superfoods. Bang, that was the other. Is that what it is? Is that triggering this, that, and the other? That's it. I'm going carnivore then. And all during that time, I mean, it's taken all that time to get to that stage, but suddenly everything seemed simple. It simplifies. You haven't got to think about anything else. You just eat the meat, the eggs, the fish, whatever it is. And yeah, it just ticked every box for me. And the sad thing is, while poor Adam was going through his problems with, with his wife and the dreadful problems she was having with cancer, I had all this information, and of course you can't impart that properly. You kind of you want to say, well, why not try and stop having this? Maybe that would help. But of course, it would all sound terrible because she was so poorly, so I couldn't do anything at the time. I used to try and talk to Adam about it, but he was obviously you have to go by what the doctors say. Of course you do. I get that. But he's now, as he said to you, he totally gets it. He's read. He's funny. He said to me the other day. We had a WhatsApp meeting, and he was saying, "I could do it. It's my birthday." He said, I'd love any of these books would do." And he laid them all. He said, "I want change your diet, change your mind, change your diet." All of these books, Toxic Superfood, whatever it was. And I'm saying to him, "Oh, I've read that one. Oh, I've read that one as well. Oh, I've got that one." So we've come together now, and it's fascinating. We can have a discussion about how to make meat interesting. you know, and of course his children are really enjoying it. They're thriving on it. I mean, I think one of them is she. What we've said to them is enjoy whatever food you have. If you're going to a party, of course, eat whatever they're eating, but just always have that knowledge that it's not that good to have all these carbs and all this sugar, which makes sense. And I mean, little Jack, he's only 8, but he's totally into it. And every time I look at them and see them, they look so well. It's fab. It really is fantastic. And really, I said to Adam, I said, after all these years of stress and I would almost call it bipolar kind of reactions, my reactions to things, totally off the scale. And, it's all been triggered by the same thing. And it's such a shame that I've got to this age now. I'm in my 70s now, and I've only just conquered it. Do you know what I mean? But I know I'm never going back. I'm never going back.
So how long has it been?
Well, from I suppose carnivore, I would say a year. Ketovore, a couple of years before that. Yeah. So it's been a lengthy process with falling off wagons, of course, getting back on again, which is the thing, isn't it? Just don't let it knock you down. You got to keep on doing it. And I feel the best. I'm living my best life now, ironically, at this age. I feel good. I feel calm. I feel like I've got tons of confidence now, which I never had. I never had any belief in myself. I always felt like a bit of a fraud if I did do well in anything. And I'm sure people would say, well, that's nothing to do with sugar. I don't know. I think it is because, as I say, my whole life was shaped by my addiction. I've no doubt in my mind at all because I just feel like a different person.
I think, I think changing the way you're eating and your body responding properly because you're giving it the nutrition it needs, I think your
Exactly.
confidence does improve
Mm,
because
definitely.
you're just moving through life in a much better way, you know?
Yeah,
It's like before it's like you're struggling through life, right? Because you're putting yourself at a disadvantage.
exactly. Struggling through life. That's right. That's exactly the way it was. You're just getting day to day through life, but not actually enjoying it, not actually getting anything out of it. You know,
It's like
it's
yeah, you gotta fight everything. It's like fight to wake up, fight to get out of bed,
yeah,
fight to get get
exactly
cooking the
right.
breakfast and yeah.
I mean, I remember sitting in the garden um, in France, a couple of years in. In fact, it was about. I've got a diary that I was writing. They always say committed to paper. That helps, and I used to do that with dietary things. And I was sitting in the sun, you know, in the garden. But I thought, and I was so depressed, so low. And of course, the irony of it is when you've got guests in the garden, just up the garden from you, having their drink and enjoying their holiday, um, you can't let them see that. So I'm always, hey, yeah, great, everything's fine. Can I get you a beer? Yeah, fantastic. You know, and then I'm sitting down the bottom of the garden, and I thought, right, I'm going to write this down. I've just got a tiny little clip of this, a chunk of it. It says this roller coaster has lasted 62 years. That's what I was then, almost 63, with no actual end in sight as yet. I feel ill, plain and simple, headachy, nauseous, out of sorts. Sugar has become a panacea for all things remotely stressful, even when I'm not really aware that I actually am stressed. It's a silent hoodlum, knocking my immune system down like a sledgehammer. Nothing good can come of it. It is purely and simple bad for me. And I fear the future as it stands. Now that scared me that I'm looking at it now, you know, how close did I come to serious depression then? And the fact that I had to hide it all the time. I had to hide feeling so low and so down about things that had happened. And of course, even now, I'm still doing all the catering. I now have the dilemma that I won't eat what the rest of the guests eat, but I still have to provide it. How do I how do I do that? I feel, number one, I feel guilty giving them all of this lovely desserts and whatever. Um, but if I stop doing it and say that we're going to run a carnivore business, there won't get anybody coming. So what do you do?
Steak for everyone. Yeah.
So I've got this dilemma, but you know, what can you do?
So how has your husband been with this?
My husband, the current husband, he totally gets it, but he doesn't want to do it. And I think it's just too hard for him. Um, and I understand that. You know, he loves his chocolate and he loves his sweet treats. And he's very much a creature of habit. So, you know, at lunchtime, he will have his basic lunch, but then he's always got to have a sweet treat afterwards. Always. He doesn't need it. He's not hungry, but he just wants a Twix or something like that. So I have to watch him have that. But it's not that he doesn't understand. But the people that don't understand, I mean, friends and family don't understand it. They think it's totally bonkers. Um, and I can see why. I mean, I've been, you know, vegetarian, vegan, now keto, then ketovore, then carnivore. So, you know, when I talk about anything to do with nutrition, their eyes roll. You know, here she goes
Uh,
again.
yeah, here she goes again, and she's on another thing now.
Another diet. And I keep saying it's not a diet because it's not about weight loss. I've lost all the weight I want to lose. That's great. I'm fine with that. But it's deeper than that, isn't it? Once you start to research it, you see it for what it is. And everybody without fail will always say, oh, I don't eat much sugar. But they do, because it's hidden. It's in foods you never even dreamed it was in. You know, everything's carbs, isn't it? All fast food is carbs. The pizzas, the
That's
pasta,
right.
it's endless, isn't it? And I don't know how. I'm happy doing it for me, and I'm on Facebook forums, you know, for that, so that you've got some support. And I love watching, you know, Homestead How, Kerry. You know, I've got his T-shirt on, in fact. Healing Humanity, the power of a proper human diet. I've got 3 of his t-shirts. Um, and I find wearing them even gives me inspiration, makes me feel empowered. It kind of keeps reinforcing it. Yes, stick to it. This is what you need to do.
Yeah. So on sticking to it, what is your menu like day to day?
Yeah, I will have. I'll get up in the morning, have a big glass of kefir, which it's still dairy, but I need dairy. I don't know why. I think I do, but anyway, I have a big glass of kefir. That's my starter. Then round about 11, 12, I have perhaps 3 eggs and some whatever meat is left from the night before. Quite often, I mean, I had some yesterday for breakfast. For instance, I had some roast lamb that was left over, so I had a big thing of that, and I had a couple of eggs with that. So I do mix it up. So that's lunchtime. And then I'm not hungry. I have to say, that's the thing. I'm not hungry after that. It's high fat, what I'm having. So, I might have perhaps a coffee with a big lump of butter in it. And, no cream. I'm trying to cut down on the cream. But MCT oil, a little bit of MCT oil, which I've read is very good, anti-Alzheimer's. Anything that does anti-Alzheimer's has got to be good, as far as I'm concerned, because we all want to keep our marbles, don't we? Um, and it's enough for me. The fat in it keeps me so satiated that I'm just not hungry, and I don't think about food. I only eat when I'm actually I'm actually hungry. I don't think I ever knew. I can honestly say I'd never knew when I was hungry or not before. I just knew it was a certain time. Everyone's eating. Let's eat. And you eat and eat way too much, way too, just out off the scale. Or even if it's not, it's going to be all sugary. And I never knew what it was to be, honestly, seriously, never knew what it was to be actually hungry. And it's a totally different experience, isn't it? Totally. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. You go through life just on edge all the time because
yeah.
your body's like addicted. You're just on the edge all the time and you think, "Oh, well, that's what hungry means. Wonder why I'm hungry all the time."
Mm. Yeah, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. It can't be, it can't be. But when you actually feel proper hunger, totally different. And you think, yeah, I've got to eat. I think, I should stop now and eat. And I'll eat like Dr. Ken Berry, love him. He always says, eat till you're stuffed. And I know what he means. But the trouble is, I'm often hearing that women need to eat more fat. You need to eat more um, for hormonal reasons, whatever. But I just can't. I'm so full. So, but it does. I seem to be okay. I mean, I had a cholesterol and sort of blood check about 2 years ago, I think it was, and the doctor then said, and I was into keto then. I didn't tell him, of course, and he said, "Oh well, I wish my results were as good as that." And I thought, wow. And of course, he's there with a huge belly, you know. And I know that if I mentioned anything to do with keto, his eyes would roll and he'd say, "No, you can't do that," because that's what they're it's ingrained in them that this low fat nonsense and cholesterol
Right.
levels. You know.
The thing is, though, when the doctor's sitting in front of you with the big pot belly like that or whatever, and like their advice just rolls straight over me when it's like that. It's like, well, you're not really giving me
Mm.
this advice from a place of authority.
Exactly. But they are medical people, and that's the irony of it. Why do they not continue their research once you've become a doctor? Surely it doesn't end there. Shouldn't they be? Everybody knows. We know that things change. That different, different tests, different thoughts about nutrition. It's changing all the time. Of course, it is. And all this low fat nonsense started with Ansel Keys, as most people know it really was just a money making thing for the sugar industry, and yet and there's no actual evidence. If you said to your doctor, for instance, yeah, I'll do low fat and I'll do the low cholesterol if you show me the data on that, and they can't because there actually isn't any, and that's the irony of it. There is no actual data on that to prove it. We've all just accepted it, haven't we?
Yeah, well, see, the problem with all this stuff, like when you talk to a doctor or you talk to a researcher or whatever, and you say, well, there's nothing that actually links this to this. There's no cause and effect stuff. And they'll say, but this study says this study says that. And it's like, yeah, but the way they do the studies, they
Mm,
come up with what they think they want to prove or what they want to
exactly.
prove. And then they design the study in a way that proves that.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. It is what it is. I mean, I will keep doing this, and I'm going to keep telling people about it. Because you feel like you get sort of messianic about it, don't you? Really, you feel like you've got to tell people and spread the word, but you can't because people just go, "Whoa, no, I can't do that. I won't do that. I won't." So I don't
Yeah.
know what the answer is, whether it's going to change. I mean, now there's this massive vegan movement, isn't there? Which
Well,
is
what's
kind of
that like in France?
not you don't see it here. We're in rural France, so you don't see much of it. But you've only got to look on YouTube, and you can see, how aggressive they are about it. And it seems to be a thing that they want us to all cut down on meat, and they say things like, well, of course, as we know, we should all be cutting down on meat. No, we shouldn't. Why do they say that? Because they're not thinking about the health side of it, and they're talking about, inventing or producing man-made meat. That's I mean, I've tried those Impossible burgers. Why would you even do that? It makes no sense at all, and they're vile for one thing, full of
You
additives.
impossible to eat.
Exactly. They are disgusting. And they're almost bloody. I don't know if you've ever looked at one. If you cook it, you cook one of these Impossible burgers, and they have red. Obviously, it's like beetroot or something they must use. I don't know, but they look so meaty that at the time when I was vegan, it put me off because it just looked too bloody. It's our thinking that that's better than the real thing. Than
Well, anything that has canola oil as an ingredient cannot be better than the real thing. It's
It's dreadful stuff, isn't it? That is something I
mm.
did give up all seed oils years ago. So something was percolating even then. It was getting through the brain that certain things I was convinced by that seed oils, forget it. So I've only ever used olive oil and butter really, and coconut oil now and again. But I do find the taste of that a bit off-putting. So I've always done that.
I used coconut oil for a while when I was cooking early
Yeah.
on, and I found that, like, I don't like my I don't like my food tasting like the beach. So
You're so right. There's something desperately wrong, isn't there, with bacon that tastes of coconut? No, I'm sorry. That's wrong on every level, isn't it? But I get it. That it's good. Um, I remember once we have a forum out here called the DVN, the Dron Valley Network, and you put out there things that perhaps if you're English and you can't find a certain thing in the shop, other people read it and they say, "Oh yeah, you can buy that in so and so." And I'd once put out there, then I was transitioning onto coconut oil. Everything was good for coconut. And I said, "Does anybody know where I can buy coconut oil from?" And some knowing person, replied and said, "Oh, excuse me, isn't coconut oil a saturated fat? Question mark. And aren't we all supposed to be cutting down on saturated fats?" And to one of those woo moments. So I replied in no uncertain terms. I managed to cut and paste something from the internet that was saying how good coconut oil is for you and how, saturated fats are actually what we need and not what we don't need. He didn't reply back after I'd sent that. But I made sure he knew that my thoughts on that. But when all this saturated fat thing, when you think your brain is something like 95% cholesterol, isn't it? And you get cholesterol from saturated fat. And then you look at the soaring numbers of people with Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. My own father had Parkinson's and died of it. And from the 70s, we've all been cutting back on fat. Now, surely there's a correlation between that massive reduction in fat, saturated fats, increase in polyunsaturated fats, the bad ones, the seed oils, and the increase in brain brain disease. To me, that looks so obvious. It's like a no-brainer. Pardon the pun. It's a why doesn't everyone else see that? That doctors will
This
say,
is
"Oh,
the problem.
yeah." The doctors will say, "Oh, well, people haven't been following the guidelines. That's why they're still obese or they're still getting rubbish." You can't label everybody as not trying. Everybody tried. If you're told by your doctor you've got to go low fat, you will do it, but it hasn't worked.
Yeah, meat consumption's gone down since they started demonizing it. Um,
Exactly.
like the thing is, correlation only matters to them when it suits them.
Yeah.
Correlation doesn't matter to them when it points out the flaws in what they've been recommending, you know? So if it's like we tell them Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's have all gone up since you told us to use these seed oils and all this kind of sugar and all this crap, they'll go, "Oh, but yeah, but it's something else. Look over
Yeah, but
there.
nothing to do with
Look over
that.
there. The shiny thing."
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And will it ever change? I don't know. What will it take for people to be given not the lies that your doctor told you, like Ken Berry's book, which is so good, the lies
Mm.
my doctor told me. When is it going to actually be recognised? I mean, there was a medical paper written, I don't know if it was the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, that actually stated we can find no evidence that saturated fat causes heart disease and, atherosclerosis, build up of plaque. There is no actual evidence. And they did come out with that, and you can find it on the internet if you search. But why is that? Why was that ignored? And it just
Well, see,
beggars
the problem is all these people that are trained by doctors who are basically trained by Big Pharma.
Yeah, cool.
There's the good ones that escape, like Ken Berry and Dr. Chafee and all them. But for the majority of them, really, they're trained into being professional goalpost movers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
every time you go, "Ah, gotcha," they're like, "No, you didn't. I moved the goalposts." So yeah. So if someone came to you and said, "Okay, I want to start carnivore. Tell me what to do, Pam." What would you recommend? How would you
I,
recommend they transition in?
well, unlike Adam, my son, I wouldn't go full blown straight away because I think it's such a shock to your system. And I think you would probably end up with adverse effects, not just the keto flu thing. I think that would be, because as soon as you start to feel ill, you think, oh, well, it must be the diet then. Um, I would go very, very slowly and just, first of all, cut back on, look at what you're eating as a whole and cut back on all the high carb stuff, the potatoes, the pasta. Try and find alternatives for those things. The bread, you don't need bread. You can make a lettuce sandwich. That's what I have. Big strips of cos lettuce. Fill that up with eggs, tuna, whatever you fancy. Whack on another, and then you've got a sandwich. It's psychological. It's still a sandwich, isn't it? Do it slowly and just do a week of it first and see how that goes. And if once you start to feel better, that's the first thing. It's not about weight really, because most people will say, "Oh, I need to lose some weight. Maybe I'll try it." No, that's the wrong. You shouldn't gamut it from that. It's about healing. It's about reducing inflammation, isn't it? It's about all these things are kind of inflammatory. They used to say meat was inflammatory. Of course, it's not. It's the opposite. But yeah, I would say go slowly. That's how it worked for me. I mean, I spent years doing it, so it's every little step. See how you get on with that. I certainly wouldn't recommend going carnivore straight away. No, even Ken Berry. I mean, he was keto for a long time, and his wife still is, I believe. Um, it's something you kind of reach as a goalpost, I think, because it's too dramatic. Plus, I think the biggest problem, for what it was for me, is the social alienation. I don't know how you find that, but if there's ever a family gathering or you're going out for dinner with friends, you've got to face the fact that you are the odd one out, and that they're all going to go, "Oh, she's off again," as if you've got. Sorry, that was my dog. Um, as if you're just off on one again. You've got to kind of be brave. You've got to find your inner confidence and say, no, this is what I need to do for me. You do what you want to do. That's fine. But I've got to do it for me. And once you've reached that stage, you've cracked it. I mean, my husband's away for a week at the moment. The fridge, it just has my eggs, my meat, my butter, a little thing of cream, all the things I love. It's such a simple way of eating, isn't it? It's simple. People say, oh, it's very, very expensive. I suppose it could be. I mean, if you're having grass fed, blah, blah, that is quite difficult. It can be very expensive, and especially if you've got a family. That must be very difficult. But as Ken Berry says, you can thrive on cheap mince. Just have, use cheap cuts of meat. I mean, I just bought a huge piece of beef, paleron, they call it, which is a bit like chuck steak, I think. Slow cook that. That lasts for days. You've got all the fat in there as well. You got your bone broth that comes from, all the bones that you're using. Yeah, I think do it slowly and just keep an eye on how you feel and how you don't worry about if you suddenly your stomach starts to be, you've either got diarrhea 1 minute or you're constipated the next. Of course, you're going to affect your gut biome. It is a major part of you and it needs to adjust. That's why I say don't do it too suddenly. You need to adjust. And that's why I have kefir in the morning, because kefir, I think, lines your stomach and gives you the good bacteria to start each day. That's how I look at it. I make my own yogurt as well. That's there's a Dr. Davis, isn't there, who talked about the super yogurt with you can add all sorts of friendly bacteria to it to make a superfood, really. But talking about superfoods, when I look back at the amount of kale smoothies that I used to get through, I used to spinach smoothies, pack in as much as, oh yeah, the more that you put in, the better it is. And then I'd have the most dreadful stomach and think, well, it must be okay because it's kale and spinach, so I'll just have to get used to it. What? It's just so ridiculous. And then, of course, I learned about oxalates, oxalic acid, phthalates. Once you've got all this in front of you, this information, you think, what was I doing? What was I thinking?
And part of the problem is, as humans, we often start to feel that anything worth doing is worth suffering for.
Yes.
And so when we're trying to get healthy, it's like we can't believe it can be easy because getting healthy is a positive thing. So we have to suffer through a journey to get there.
Exactly.
And so when you're feeling bad, you're feeling hungry all the time, you've got kidney stones, whatever it is, it's like, well, this is all just part of the journey. I've just got to suffer through this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is what you do. And that's why when I used to go to the gym, I hated it. Hated going to the gym, but I did it because I thought, no, this is what it's about. It's about, you know, being uncomfortable. That's a good thing. I'm starving. Good. That's great. My stomach's shrinking. You tell yourself this rubbish, don't you?
So, Pam, how can people reach out to you? Do you have any social media or any way of getting in contact?
Yes, I've got an email address, and our company is called French Photographic Holidays. And if you Google it, that comes up top on Google for photographic holidays. But you can contact me through that. There's all there's Instagram and various things on there. Yeah. So yeah, the email address is lestudio60@gmail.com. If anybody wants to have a chat, I don't know, talk about things, that's fine.
No
Facebook,
worries.
I'm on Facebook as under that as well.
Yeah, no worries. I'll link to your email and website in the show notes.
Hmm.
Um, Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Pam. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for your time.